So the first thing you'll see when you're ready to sign in to Ready would be the sign-in screen. We make it easy for you to add users within the department through the administration of the system, and the user will receive an email. It will recognize their unique .edu address, and the authentication system in place will recognize them as a valid user. And once that's accomplished and they set their password in the system, they can go to your university website, sign in, and if Ready is one of the tools that they should have access to, there's no re-authentication needed. When you sign in, depending upon the role that you have, you will see what your role determines you can see and what rights you might have to that information. The menus are very, very simple. You'll see plans, which is the main screen I'm looking at now, which is the beginning for most folks. I am an administrator in the system, perhaps with multiple campus locations, so I see everybody's plans at once. Help is always there. Admin is the controls for all the system. We'll talk about that. And then reporting is available here as well. Just simply click on those other screens and those will be accessed. You can see over here, you can sign out and check your account settings. So the first thing I look at is the list of all the plans for all of my departments. You'll notice that acronyms help me to make sure that these plans are in the order that I want to see them. These acronyms can be double level or even more, so you can identify separate campuses and separate departments. I see that each department has a status which tells me they're either complete, due for review, in progress, or in review. I can also see when they were actually created. And if I look at the date a plan was created and when it was last updated, this will tell me which departments at a glance are active in the system and doing what we ask. If there's a global date for everybody to have reviewed and updated their plans, you might see a lot of them with the same date, and that's what you're looking for. Over here, you can see that I can view a plan, edit, or delete a plan. Delete, of course, is available to me because I am a super administrator of the system. If I look at editing or viewing as my options, it really doesn't matter which one I pick when I view a plan, such as biology. Edit is available here. And for users of past versions of Ready, you know that now we've kind of rearranged where things are and also added more color. So when I'm looking at a department, it's blue, but if I go to edit that department, the color cues tell me, oh, you're now editing. I'm less inclined to get lost whether or not I'm actually, changing anything or just reviewing. Of course, some users, based on their roles, will only be viewers, and so they may never see this color yellow when they look at plans. Saved is here as well, and that's a button that lets me know that I can make some changes and decide to save or not save what I did. When I first go into a department, I see the main information for that department. I'll see what they're called, what they say they do there, what major division they're part of, and an acronym they've chosen to describe themselves. And then the important things like who heads that unit, and then the numbers of staff and residents and students and all these numbers can be edited right in line once you're editing. So, you only have 3 others, but we've added a guest. You make all those changes. You also see department types is here, and it's listed, and somebody says, they can decide what department they're actually a part of. All of these come from setting up of the system, and you'll see that it's also very flexible in the order that these are created in or that they're showed in, and you can change that on the fly. It's part of what really makes the system flexible enough to handle the many changes that you go through. Adding a building is very simple. Buildings come from a list. The system allows you to import all your buildings at once, complete with their addresses so that you can get the building locations in our mapping software and reports, and I'll show you that. This is a planning system meant for each department to look at their unique situation, their assets, their space, their staff, and decide what needs to be done today to make sure that they can recover from an event. But we do have one question that pertains to the immediate health and safety of the occupants of their buildings, and that is, do you have an evacuation plan? So they can say yes or no, or I don't know, etc. So this is the basic information that we would want out of every department. And when one of the difficulties you face is getting cooperation from all of your departments, and this is a very good place to start and to tell each department that we're implementing a system now. Please go into the system after you get your invite and just fill out the department information so that we know that everybody has access to the system and put in this information. And this can be done in a few minutes. At that time, you should see quite a bit of a percentage of all departments having created plans. And that's enough right there to give you all this. There's certainly more in depth, but I want to show you quickly that you, as the administrator of the system, will have the opportunity in required configuration to quickly put in all those things that you want to come from pull downs in their department screens. And so adding a building is pretty simple. You'll do something like this is the building, and we officially call it RBT 568, and you put an address in. And whether or not it's owned or not owned, etc. Save that. And now this will be a building that, as they create their plans, will be instantly available to them. You'll see other things like department types. If you were using a system where some of this information must be hard-coded in, you'd lack the flexibility to be able to do things like move information technology to the top of the list that's presented in their pull downs. So you have the ability dynamically to change the order of these things, as well as actually type in and edit these right online as well. So the moment you add buildings or buildings get sold off, you can keep all that up to date. The same with major divisions and centrally owned applications, all the things that you want to make sure that your users can see and in what order you want them to see as they create their plans is controlled from administration. Notice that help is always there. Help will lead you to a portal which actually has all kinds of resources to help you use the system better, community forums that help you get in contact with all the other users, a cafe. The solutions here would include what an interview form looks like, all that kind of thing. There is a Word version of the embedded questions within Ready so that you actually can share with people ahead of time the depth to which the system will take them when they're an instructional or research department that really has some crucial assets. And we make that available as a standalone, and you can always access that and share it with folks. So if we go back to plans and we look at biology and edit this, phase 2, after you've got a real good percentage of all your departments to create their basic information, is to say to them, we want to make sure that everybody puts in at least one critical function, something that they do in their department that they feel is, you know, the most important thing that they do. And there's a few extra on here. You wouldn't see a department have this many usually, but you'll get the idea that, you know, maybe number 1 would be instruction, and number 2 would be research, or they may be involved in donor relations. So for this biology department, they have, you know, several critical functions that we can look at. If they want to manage these critical functions, they can go into them, and you can see within each critical function, we have the ability to describe it, let the system know about which peak periods are involved in that activity, any documents that they want to upload to the system that might pertain to, you know, details about that, any dependencies that they would have, etc. The goal of this is kind of to lead them through thinking through everything that they do, and this really can be unique to education. If it's instruction and as a critical level 2, as opposed to critical 1, which is involving life, health, and safety, and these come from pull downs, and you can create the language in these levels of criticality as well as you know, there will be many critical functions that might be already contained. Anytime a department creates one, that same critical function ID will be accessible to somebody to use here. So you begin to see a lot of synergy of named critical functions created by one department that can be shared by others. So there's a lot of opportunities for them to just simply grab that and say, oh yes, we do that as well. So, you know, the descriptions can be as simple as we teach. The name of the section, you know, they can put whatever they want in there. Bill Jones is the responsible person primarily, or whatever, you know, a whole list of people. It just describes what they do. They can then go to peak periods and decide that the peak period is November and December. That's simple radio button choices. They can go to documents and upload documents. You can certainly identify that document as a physical document that's in place on paper somewhere, where it is, the name of it, who owns it, where it's kept, etc. Or you can drag and drop files directly from your computer right into this. Dependencies for instruction would be who else do you depend on to do what you do, and if it's disrupted, you know, it would cause a problem. So you can add upstream and downstream dependencies simply by selecting them from a list, and you can save those. So as you create these dependencies, later on you'll see in reports that you can tell who's connected. But just the act of saying what other departments am I associated with that I need, you know, tells us a lot, and will give us some clue about, you know, how interconnected we are. But one of the most important things, and here's where you really see the interview nature of the product. So if you're concerned about a disruption of teaching as a consequence of an event, you can click "This may occur," and you might say, uh, without a classroom and lab, we're not teaching. Could this be a disruption of research or patient care? Is this a medical facility? Could faculty depart? Could you lose some students? Oh yes, you know, you can put all this in and really get an idea of the consequences of slow recovery. You answer all those questions, and really it means to prompt, you know, what are our vulnerabilities here. And then other kind of covers anything else, you know, and then what's your recovery time objective? If you have it set up to do so, which is optional, you can say, oh, no, 1 week, yep. You do all that and you save it. And then the next step is to say, can we think of some ideas to cope? And here's where the interview form asks, you know, really that inexperienced coop planner, what are you going to do if you have no space? What are you going to do if you're missing your staff? Are there any unique skills that are needed? And can you think of anybody that can substitute if you know, have no access to people that have unique skills that attract students or continue research, etc. Things like, can people work from home, or how would you get some of this stuff done if they couldn't access their network, etc. So it really says, can you think of alternate ways to accomplish what you have? And this really is something where you want that department to take it seriously and think of things that really could mitigate a risk. If they go through those two things, then the end result should be, I've got some action items. Now you see there's some already been put in place. An action item to arrange for alternate space, specifically to call nearby universities and see if their location might have space for your students to meet. Calling to ensure that you have a police contact, whatever it might be. You'll see that some are already suggested. Again, anytime a user in another department puts in something that might make sense to others, it's captured here. So this path of you know, 7 steps for one critical function will really give the user an idea for what to be ready for, and then action items to truly take that step. So let's look at one in detail. Arranging for alternate meeting space, and we've assigned that to Jonathan Wilson, or John Wilson. You can take a look at that in detail and see that the system can capture even more. If you're going to arrange for an alternate meeting space, is there a cost? And we can capture some of this financial impact information and put it in there. Is this going to be more than a one-time cost? Is there a due date? And let's make this more realistic and say that we want this done by September 22nd. Whose scope is this? Is it your unit or with some others on campus? Has this yet begun? Call real estate and save. And so you've really put something concrete in there that must be done. And now in the system, this is where it all pays off. You've captured information. All the departments have created their plans. They've all put in at least one critical function. And now with reporting globally, unlike, let's say, a scenario where you have a whole bunch of paper plans or even Word documents all in one place, the departments have created their plans. They've created them electronically in a document. They're all shared, but they're all separate individual pieces. With Ready, you've captured it into an application which now says, I can see all plans at once. and all the common data elements in that are available to me in a very, very powerful reporting tool, which will give me the ability to see all my divisions and all kinds of information about the status of those plans, any critical functions identified in those plans. And when you see these, know that you can drill through and take a look at some details about those plans and what's particular about that plan, and see the information. You can also look at things like your buildings. We import a file with all your buildings and building locations, and the end result is a map of your area with campus locations. Again, you can drill down into those. Do we own this? What is this building? One of the things about reporting is that you can filter by various factors and just see, some departments. And when you filter them, they're instantly, we're just dealing with those. And if those have dependencies, you may say, they're too far across town to have those dependencies. So you might, in reviewing the plan, say, you're going to want to relook at another option for that dependency. The users will also have created, hopefully, some action items. They've identified that, they didn't have their courses ready to go in an LMS. And they've created action items and given themselves due dates. You can see biology has been particularly busy with action items. This department has taken it seriously. They've looked at all the things they have to do, and you as the system administrator can go in and say, here are the things that are in progress. So as opposed to having to go through all kinds of plans or asking everybody, tell me what action items you've identified and who's doing it and what cost is it, you have that all at your fingertips here. And you can see all the things that are critical operations that have action items, what they are, who's supposed to do them, any cost involved, and know that you can import that immediately into an Excel spreadsheet or into a CSV and have that available in a venue that can then create charts and graphs and do all kinds of interesting and very communicative output. With the filters, you can really see, let me just see things that have a status of completed. So how well did everybody do on getting their items completed? Well, one, environmental services had one thing done, and what was it? They arranged for alternate meeting space and they got that done. Great. Apparently everybody else didn't, so we have some real issues there. Now status is a filter and it remains in place even as you click on different tabs. So keep that in mind. It is, that is the way it's supposed to work, and it allows you to kind of quickly pivot from one view to, how does that affect all the other items we might be looking at? Taking that off is simply deselecting it and just selecting all, and then you're back to all your, all your items. Let's see now. Back in administration, there's a whole set of optional configurations. And this is where, for some departments that really have some critical functions that they do for your institution, you're really going to want them to be able to get into depth. If you had a particular asset in an instructional department that was such an attraction to students that they came internationally because you had you had a particular set of skills or a particular person on staff that was virtually irreplaceable. You can add categories and skills to the interview form, so that some departments might well find that they have the depth that they need to go to make sure that that's captured, that what makes them unique, what makes them special is captured. And it may be something that has quite a bit of financial impact. Should your instructional department have an extremely expensive set of CNC machinery that's of a certain vintage and irreplaceable, or anything like that, all those can be captured. For instruction, we have a particular set of depth categories. There is an option within the system to say, I want at first not to go to that level, and I just want to have everybody on kind of a staff level of readiness. So there's some real flexibility about to what depth you want to go, and I certainly look at and recommend to any users that you phase in with an approach that says, let's go from simple that first year to more complex, and allow people to have the time to create these plans that are meaningful without overwhelming them.